Good Morning Britain migrant report sparks fury. What a joke! ITV was given exclusive access to film the deportation of dozens of foreign migrant criminals. And UK editor Paul Brand explains what he saw. Fans have been left furious following a migrant report issued by Good Morning Britain. During today's morning program, the ITV show had been given exclusive access to film the deportation of dozens of foreign migrant criminals. They said that were put on a flight to Romania after losing their right to remain in Britain. These individuals had served sentences for offences including theft, sexual abuse, and murder. Paul Brand then explained that the operation to remove the 47 migrants, who came to the UK legally, cost hundreds of thousands of pounds. They were reportedly given bank cards pre-loaded with up to £2,000 each to help them resettle in Romania. One person said on X, "This Labour government's deportation policy is laughable by the day, giving criminals £2,000 of taxpayers' money to leave." A second also commented, "Rewarded and given £2,000, are you kidding me? The UK government are a joke on the world stage." A third typed, "You gave these scumbags £2,000 each of taxpayers' money. How dare you? And you got access to film and you blurred the images. What a joke. This government needs to go." A fourth also remarked, "They get given 2k, then when they have no money left, are they going to try come back again?" A fifth also said, "Should be banned from entering the UK following their deportation if they've earned themselves a criminal record. No pocket money, no privileges, basic flight back to their homeland." Home Secretary Shabana Mahmood, in her first in-depth interview since taking on the position, responded to the footage and said, "Out of context, it's not great, it doesn't look good." She told ITV News, "A voluntary removal is actually cheaper for the British taxpayer. It has long been the case that we do offer financial packages as an incentive to people to drop their claims and drop the attempts they make to stay in our country, and to board a flight and leave." The Good Morning Britain studio was meant to be buzzing with the usual Monday morning chatter, coffee mugs steaming on the desk, producers whispering through earpieces, and viewers waking up across the UK to the familiar rhythm of headlines, weather updates, and lively debates. But what started as a routine broadcast quickly spiraled into a storm that set social media ablaze. It began innocuously enough. Susanna Reid, with her trademark calm but firm delivery, introduced a segment on the government's latest migrant policy report. The report claimed that recent measures to curb illegal crossings had been largely effective, and that Britain's borders were now more secure than ever. Sitting beside her, co-host Richard Madeley nodded along, though with a slightly bemused expression that viewers had come to know all too well, half intrigued, half skeptical. But when Adil Ray, filling in as political commentator, chimed in with sharp criticism of the report, the atmosphere in the studio shifted. "This is spin, pure and simple," he said, his voice cutting through the set. "We have record numbers of arrivals this year alone. To tell the British public that this is somehow under control is insulting." Within minutes, the segment snowballed into one of those classic GMB clashes that dominate headlines long after the cameras stop rolling. The spark of outrage. The report had already been controversial before it even made it onto morning television. Leaked excerpts suggested the government had used creative accounting to reduce migrant figures on paper, quietly reclassifying thousands of asylum seekers into different categories to make the statistics appear rosier. Critics accused ministers of playing a numbers game while ignoring the human reality of crowded housing facilities, overwhelmed local councils, and communities grappling with the challenges of rapid change. On GMB, the divide was clear. Former Home Office advisor Isabel Matthews, brought on as a guest, praised the government's approach as pragmatic and forward-looking. She insisted that tough border measures were working and that Britain was finally sending the right message to smugglers and migrants alike. But seated across from her was activist and immigration lawyer Daniel Okoye, who fiercely pushed back. "What message?" he demanded. "We're spending millions on policies that don't work, demonizing vulnerable people fleeing war and persecution, and now we're patting ourselves on the back for cooking the books. It's a joke. An absolute joke." That word, joke, seemed to stick. Within minutes, viewers had taken to social media, echoing the sentiment. Twitter meltdown. By the time the program cut to a commercial break, hashtags like #GMB and #MigrantReport were trending. One viewer wrote, "What a joke! How dare they call this a success when towns are at breaking point?" Another countered, "The real joke is people falling for government spin. This report is nonsense, and GMB is right to call it out." Memes began to flood in, some showing a clown holding a briefcase labeled Migrant Statistics, others reworking the GMB logo to read Government Manipulation Britain. The fury was palpable, but so was the humor, a very British way of dealing with a heated national debate. Politicians jump in. By mid-morning, politicians from across the spectrum were weighing in. Labour's Shadow Home Secretary blasted the report as an insult to the British public's intelligence, while Reform UK leader Nigel Farage tweeted, GMB finally saying what we've all known, this government's immigration policy is a joke. Time for real change. Government ministers scrambled to defend the numbers, with one anonymous source briefing that the report had been misunderstood, and that long-term trends would prove the strategy was working. But the damage was done. The phrase, what a joke, had become shorthand for the entire debacle. The public's fury. Perhaps most telling were the calls flooding into local radio stations. In Manchester, one caller fumed, I work in housing, and we're drowning. If this is what success looks like, I'd hate to see failure. In Birmingham, another said, we're a welcoming city, but don't insult us by lying. Just be honest with the numbers. Others voiced sympathy for migrants themselves, pointing out that many were victims of desperate circumstances. The joke isn't the migrants, one woman posted on Facebook. The joke is the government pretending to fix the problem while leaving everyone, migrants and citizens, stuck in limbo. Inside the GMB studio, behind the scenes, producers knew they had struck media gold. GMB thrives on moments of fiery debate, and this was one for the books. Susanna Reid later admitted that the reaction had surprised even her. We expected controversy, she told an online Q&A later that day, but the sheer level of anger, on both sides, was extraordinary. Richard Madeley, meanwhile, couldn't resist a cheeky aside as the program wrapped up. Well, he said with a half-smile, whether you think the report's a success or a failure, one thing's clear. The British public certainly doesn't think it's a laughing matter. Unless, of course, they're calling it a joke. The bigger picture. The fury over the GMB report is just the latest flashpoint in Britain's ongoing migrant debate. From the Rwanda deportation scheme to Channel boat crossings, immigration has become a political powder keg, capable of dominating headlines and sinking careers. The GMB segment tapped into years of frustration, distrust, and division. And yet, amid the shouting, there remains a quieter truth. Britain is deeply conflicted. Many want strong borders, but they also want compassion. They demand honesty from politicians but bristle when confronted with the uncomfortable realities of global crises. GMB didn't cause that conflict, it merely held up a mirror. A national joke? As the day wore on, commentators in the press picked apart the fallout. The Daily Mail declared that GMB had poured petrol on the fire, while The Guardian praised the program for exposing government spin in real time. But perhaps the most biting summary came from a columnist in The Independent, who wrote, The migrant report is not a joke. The joke is the expectation that we will swallow statistics while ignoring the human beings behind them. By evening, the phrase, what a joke, had entered the political lexicon, destined to be repeated in Parliament, in pubs, and on talk shows for weeks to come. Conclusion. The Good Morning Britain segment may have lasted only 10 minutes, but its impact rippled across the nation. It revealed the raw nerves around immigration, the deep mistrust of government spin, and the power of live television to amplify voices of outrage. For some, the migrant report was proof of progress. For others, it was proof of deception. But for nearly everyone watching, one sentiment rang louder than any official line. What a joke!